All right, ladies and gentlemen, I know you are working through this right now, and I am recording. We are currently on scatter plots 9-7. We know what a scatter plot is based on our definition, and you are all working on your graph, trying to figure out how to graph the data from this basketball starting five on their height and their weight to see if there's any sort of relationship between height and weight. The red lines represent the y and the x axes, and our first task is to, I think, label the y-axis and label the x-axis and make sure we get our numbers correct on both the x and y-axes, and then ultimately plot the points. So I am going to use my y-axis for the weight of the basketball players, and I'm going to use my x-axis for the height of the basketball players. So I'm going to label weight, and I'm going to label height. And then I'm going to start by looking at the data table, and I see that my weight, I'll start on the right side of the data table, I have a range from 160 to about 190. A range of 160 to 190. So what I'm going to do, correct me if I'm incorrect, is I'm going to start at the very bottom of my y-axis, and I'm going to put the number 0, and then I'm going to go by 10, and I'm going to go 10, 20 pounds, 30 pounds, 40 pounds, 50 pounds, 60 pounds. Does this make any sense to you? No. It makes no sense at all. So I am not going to do that. I am definitely going to start at 0 because I kind of have to. But what am I going to do so that I don't have to label all the way up until I hit to my first data point, which is 160? What do you think I should do? Tanisha?
Skip to whatever.
Skip to whatever. Okay, skip to the loo or what?
No.
Huh, you get it? Skip to the loo. Madison, what am I going to do? Count by 20s? So I could go 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 20, 40, 60, 80, 200. Yeah, that would work because I only have to get to 190. However, though, I'm going to have kind of a pretty big gap down in the lower area of the graph until I get to 160, which is my first data table. I'm not going to have a dot to like up here somewhere, right? Does anybody have a better idea than counting by 20s? Is there another idea out there that we could possibly employ? Olivia? Put a breaker in. I love it. What a great idea. So we are going to start at 0. But we are going to put in a breaker, and my breaker is going to look like that. Might not be exactly what you've seen, but I can tell it's a breaker. And then I'm going to start with my breaker with my first number. And what do you want it to be? Should it be 160? Or should it be 150? 140 maybe?
160.
Well, let's just play around a little bit. What if I started with 150? And I went by 10s to 160, to 170, to 180, to 190, to 200. Does that seem cool?
Yeah.
Maybe. Do I have a lot of space up here, though?
Yeah. Yes.
Should I use it?
Yeah.
May as well. So let's see if we can come up with a better idea. Breaker seems like a good idea. 150, I think, seems like a pretty good starting point. But is there a better way to number this, Ben Lance?
Counting by fives.
Counting by fives. So 150, 155, 160. Is that going to work? Do I have enough room?
Yeah.
So if I start here at 150, I went to 160, I went to 170, I went to 180, I went to 190. Am I technically counting by fives here?
Yeah.
I am, right? I'm just not going to label them all because we can figure that out. That works. Cool. Height. I like my y-axis now. What should I do with my height? All done?
No, we need more staples.
More staples. Gentlemen, what are we doing with the height? Somebody give me the intel. Matthew, what am I doing with the height?
Start at like 65.
Start at 65, which means I need a what?
Breaker.
I need a breaker. So I am actually going to have a breaker on my x and on my y-axis. And you want me to start at what? 65. Do I want to start right at 68, which is my lowest height? No, I don't. So start at 65, and then what do you want me to number by?
5.
65, 70, 75. So if I started at 65
like twos.
by 2s, okay, I was going to say 65 by,
2, 3. I did 3.
what do you want me to start at? 65 and go by 3s?
Yeah.
So let's go with 65 here, 68, So I'm going to just say 71, 74, I'm going to say 77. Is that high enough?
Yeah.
65, 71, 77. So my range is from 68 to 74, right? Wouldn't twos be a decent idea?
Yeah.
Let's try twos. I think it would be a little bit easier to read. So let's get rid of this. Starting at 65, let's start at 66. What do you say?
Yeah.
66, 68, 70, 72, 74, and 76. This would be 78. What do you think? Are we using much of the graph?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, now you simply plot the points. Take player number 1. They are 71 inches high. So if I find 70, and the middle between 70 and 74 is 72, 71 is going to be right here somewhere, right in the middle, right? Yes, no? And I can find 170, so I'm going to follow up 71 to 170, and I'm going to put a dot right there. That's player 1. You guys cool with that? Okay, and then I've got 68 and 160. That would put me right here. 70 and 175 would put me right about there. Yes, no? 73 and 180 would put me about right here. Yes, no? And 74 and 190 would put me about right here. Yes, no? Cool. Now, as you look at this data, where do you notice the data going? As you travel further on the height axes and you travel higher on the weight axes, what's happening? The greater the height, the what? The greater the weight, the what? So the greater the height, the greater the weight, the greater the weight, the greater the height, right? Just for kicks and giggles, the last thing we want to do, and you guys are going to have to draw this with a straight edge, we are going to draw a line through this just to see if we can get kind of an idea of where we're going. So I am going to grab this line, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to draw a line so that I have an equal amount of data below the line and an equal amount of data above the line. So my line is going to start about right here, and I'm going to try to get the data as close to that line as I can. Does that seem about right? Looks like I have 3 below and 2 above, but all of them are as close as they can possibly be. What do you think of that? Looks good? Why would I do that? Why would I draw a line there? Why would we want a line? Justin.
To show the averages.
What if there's a 6th player, but I don't have the data for the 6th player? What if someone comes off the bench on my basketball team, and someone says, well, I don't really know how big they are? Could you have a pretty good guess about how big they are based on the rest of the basketball team?
Yeah.
Yeah, say, well, someone says, well, actually, I do know something about them. I do know that they are 74 inches tall. Could you make a pretty good guess about their weight?
Yeah.
If they're 74 inches tall, you could guess that they're about, bang, 187 pounds, 186 pounds, right? If we were going by the averages of the team. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. This line right here, this line that you just drew, has a name. We're going to call this line of best fit. It's called go ahead and write that down. A line, that's one of your vocab words. The line of best fit is going to be this line right here. And the definition would be a line, I know this isn't truly how we do our notes, but it's a little bit different in this case. A line that comes closest to all the data points. So a line that comes closest to all of the data points would be your line of best fit. You want to get it as about equal as you can on the top side and as on the bottom side as possible. Questions? Just.
Would you get a point off if you listed the weight by every 10?
As long as the graph makes sense, and here's my so Justin said, would you get a point off if you did the graph a little bit differently? No, you won't. Here's what I'm going to ask you to do when you're making graphs like this, though. Use as much of the graph as you can. So in other words, use from 0 to the top and from 0 to the right side, at least in this case, use as much of it as you can. The breaker is obviously going to take up room where you're not going to have any data, so you're not going to use this area right down here. But then start numbering so that you don't start right on your lowest number and you don't end right at your top number in your ranges. So your question is, can I do it a little bit differently than that? Yes, but try to use as much of the graph as you can so that we can get a really clear idea. Otherwise, if your graph is like bunched in this small little area right there, it's really hard to tell where is what because your numbers are so small or so big. In this case, it would be so big. Ben?
Would it matter if we change the x and the y?
It would not matter. So the second point was, how many of you actually switched your height and your weight axes? Because I know you guys started this before I did. If you switched it, no, it would not matter. Are you still seeing the same relationship?
Yeah.
You're seeing the same relationship, right? If the weight goes up, the height goes up. It just doesn't matter where your axes are. So as long as they're labeled, that's why we labeled them, you wouldn't get it wrong as well. Anything else?